reading. Stop reading right now and just look at me. Okay? So the background to this is our archaeologists are studying various places in the Mediterranean world where Kronos, after castrating his father, Uranos, the sky god, threw away his sickle. And you immediately think of the northwest tip and northeast tip of Sicily, which both have names like Zancle, meaning sickle, Drepanon, meaning sickle. But there's also a sickle, a Drepanon, off the coast of Cyprus, not too far north from Paphos, which is the place in Cyprus that our speaker was inspired by. And may I continue with the emergence? So here's an archaeologist talking. This is not a poet. This is not somebody whose bread and butter is metonymy or metaphor. And he says, as he's watching the incoming waves break, that suddenly the southwest wind forces two breakers to collide, and I quote, "When the angle of impact is about 90 degrees, the break is both concentrated within a small width of swell and very violent, so that the breaker shoots up in a column like a waterspout, 10 to 15 feet high, and falls back in an outward cascade of foam which may be carried some feet to leeward by the wind. It looks exactly like a human figure, literally rising from the sea and spreading long hair and dripping arms." So also in the Hesiodic Theogony, moi, I add, Aphrodite emerges from the foam, which is actually called Aphros, and so there we have an archaeologist's eye view of the birth of Venus. Our historian Robin Lane Fox immediately starts disclaiming that Botticelli couldn't possibly have understood some of these things, and so whatever Botticelli saw in his painting, it may just be as what's the word that I remember when I was an adolescent in Indiana? A coinkydink. Did I say that right? Which brings me to the study of words. Coinkydink, coincidence. Philologos. A lot has been written about philologos as the way certain Alexandrian scholars, that is to say scholars in the Library of Alexandria, refer to themselves. But you know what? I'm not going to say anything about philologos. You all know about philology. You all know from Nietzsche that philology is the art of reading slowly. What more can I tell you? I want to go to grammatikos, okay? If you look at the Loeb Classical Library translations of prose authors who talk about grammatikoi, people who do this, this, grammatike, the science of being a grammatikos, you know how it's translated? Grammarian. So that's why when we were talking earlier, and this wonderful set of facts we learned this morning about Pompey and who his tutor was, and various other Roman VIPs and their tutors, the grammatikoi, who were hanging around these Romans of wealth, power, and prestige, were not grammarians. They were professors of classical philology who happened to want to call themselves grammatikoi because their greatest master, Aristarchus, who flourished in 150 BCE or so, he called himself grammatikos. So listen, if he calls himself grammatikos, we all do. And maybe that's another way of saying that I don't mind being called a grammarian either, frankly. I thought, hey, here's a way to talk about the death of our field. Plato's Phaedo, where this good-looking student of Phaedo is so despondent, and Socrates goes up to him and says, he's about to drink the hemlock, and he says, "You're very sad, aren't you?" And our speaker says, "Yeah, I'm really sad." And he says, "Are you going to cut your locks, your beautiful locks, and mourn for me?" And the student says, "Yeah, I will." And so Socrates says, this isn't quite the way Socrates or Plato's Socrates says it, but here's the essence of it. He says, "You will not mourn my death. The only reason you should mourn is if the word dies on us." And I'm deliberately using the English language translation of the ethical dative. If the word dies on us, then we mourn, then we're despondent. I think this will help with my last slide, sacrificing a rooster to Asclepius. Think of the fact that Plato's Aristotle, did I say Plato's Aristotle? How about Plato's Socrates? I'm like one of those people at Greek American award ceremonies where statues are handed out and it's either one bald guy or another bald guy. Aristotle, Socrates, who cares? May I change this to Plato's Socrates? So when Plato's Socrates utters his last words, he says, don't forget to sacrifice a rooster to Asclepius. And may I tie that in with what we said here about the death of the Logos? So, and these are my final words, or next to last final words. And they're certainly Socrates' final words. When you check into Hotel Asclepius, you undergo an experience which in the ancient world was called an incubation. You go to sleep, and before you go to sleep, which is a mystical sleep, you sacrifice a rooster. And then you've prayed to Asclepius, who's the culture hero who invented a secret to immortalization because he was a physician. I guess he's one of our undergraduates even as we speak. And then because he discovered the secret of immortalization, he was incinerated by the divine order, but then became the culture hero who helps us when we're very ill and we hope to recover. So that's why we check into Hotel Asclepius, or the Asklepieion. And what we hope is that whatever we prayed to Asclepius the night before when we sacrifice a rooster will be granted the morning after. And I don't know whether you've ever been to Greece, and I wish you had. And so I'm talking directly to our dean here. One of my favorite experiences, since I have an iPhone that wakes me up every morning, and I set it to the sound of a rooster. And there I am on the island of Paros that happened to be, and I say, wait a minute, I didn't set my iPhone that early. It was a real rooster. And then it hit me that when you sacrifice a rooster the night before, after having prayed to Asclepius, please make me feel better, don't leave me despondent, you wake up the next morning and you hear another rooster. And so going back to what Socrates, or Plato's Socrates, is saying to the student is, don't mourn, don't be despondent unless the word dies on us. And the point is that Socrates never solves problems for us in Plato's dialogues. He solves some things, but there's so many things that are open-ended. And we have a technical word for it. It's an aporetic dialogue. To me, they're all aporetic. And what that means is he gets us started in our dialogue, but then we have to finish it. And we're not really finishing it either. We're just passing it on to the next generation who will pass it on to the next generation. And it's cyclical, just as after one rooster dies the night before, another rooster crows the morning after. That's what we're about. And it's not, as some even philosophers think, a question of, well, life is so miserable that we might as well be put out of our misery. No, it's really something much more sublime, is that there are principles of, shall we say, recycling or even immortalization after death. And that is what the word is. And what better way to end it as the way one of the Nereides in modern Greek folklore, if they appear to the captain when the captain is trying to navigate through a storm, the big question is who rules and who lives and rules the world? And the answer is Zi ke Vasilevi ke ton Gosmo Kirievi. He lives and reigns and rules the world. And it's not Alexander the Great as Cosmocrator, who celebrated the heroes at the Hellespont by running around the tumulus of Achilles. I don't know whether it was the north or south one. It's not that. It's not even Greece as a world power, because I don't think it is anymore. It's the power of the word and how it lives and reigns and rules the cosmos. So long live the word, and thank you very much.